Welcome to Ireb Resistance Radio, where we discuss the resistance work going on in Minnesota's 2nd Congressional District. Ireb is an indivisible group formed after the 2016 election in opposition to an executive that we feared was going to do grave damage to our country. As our fears have been proven out, so has our membership grown. We attract people from across the political spectrum, but make no mistake, we are united as a progressive force in Minnesota's politics. Join us on our Facebook page, search for the Indivisible Resistance of Eagan and Burnsville. To, I think it's number 9, we have podcast number 9, and our guest today is Sabrina Mauritz with Take Action Minnesota. She is their training director. Is that right, Sabrina?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, welcome. So, Sabrina, I asked to come on and do a podcast with us because I've known her right from the beginning. We've been working in this space, in this resistance movement since the beginning, and she's done a lot of work. And I wanted to bring her on and give folks a chance to get to know her. You know, we've worked together on a few things, and so So Sabrina, the first thing that we always do with IREB is whenever we have a meeting and we have a new member show up, we always ask them, and we ask you to honestly, kind of dig down a little bit for this. Everybody in IREB is somebody who's not been involved in politics before. The majority of the people in our group are all brand new people, and what we ask them when they walk through the door is, what was that thing that made you get up from your comfortable life and get involved and start putting yourself out there as a leader in your community? And it's an important thing. It's important to us. And so I'd like to ask you what your story is.
Sure. So that's an interesting way of putting it. My first ever rally or protest was an anti-NAFTA rally with Ross Perot in, I think, 1993.
Holy cow.
In Seattle. My parents took me to this. They were big Ross Perot people. I am shocked that that's something they took me to. And I still have a Ross Perot 1992 shirt. And I remember that in my 2nd grade presidential debate, I represented Ross Perot. So I have a long history of winning, I wish. But I would say that, and so it's funny to say it's always been that way, but it kind of has. I have always been pretty active in a lot of different things. And, I think I picked my battles a little bit better when I got older. Although I was part of a group against CAFTA, the Central American Free Trade Agreement, when I had a choice to be in college. So that stuck with me. And then the first ever direct action I went to was actually at John Klein's office for the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So I guess I haven't gone too far from all that. That was in 2013. But I'd say that I actually joined up as an organizer, thought that was my path versus other kinds of paths in 2012. I had done a lot of different kind of awareness building things as a college student and as a young person. I had done direct service work. I was a social worker, and the rubber hit the road for me in 2012 when the marriage amendment was on the ballot. And at the time I was working at a Catholic church, and at the time that was a scary place to be with the amendment on the ballot. A lot of us were afraid for our jobs. A lot of us people were actually getting fired, and there was a lot of people who were
I have 2 beagles, yes. Occasionally we'll fight while I'm doing this, yeah.
That's beautiful. My children might pop in, so we'll get
it's real life.
But what happened was, the church was doing unprecedented things to tell staff to promote this amendment that would have forever made it so that 2 men or 2 women or people of the same gender couldn't be married. And I, along with thousands of other Catholics, were completely frustrated by that notion. And at the time, too, I was dealing with the fact that I had begun living with the man who is now my husband, who at the time was my boyfriend. And so I was experiencing that kind of deep love that 2 people really can form together, and that, adults should be encouraged to form together. And it was very clear to me for the first time ever in a very personal way what it would feel like to, and that was something I could be fired for. Living with my then boyfriend was something I could be fired for as a church employee. And so what became very clear to me in that moment was just what some of the pain of being told that the relationship you love most in the world is a bad thing. And it would just became a point where I wasn't going to be not only not be complicit, but also just I was going to do everything I could to fight the amendment. And after coming to a couple phone banks, really great phone banks with Minnesotans United, I saw they wanted a Catholic organizer. And I was like, oh, that's not anything I could ever do. That's wild. I cannot do that. Had what we call a one-to-one in organizing with Nick Core, who was an organizer at the time. And I told him, oh, I'm thinking about applying for this position, but I could never do it. And he's like, you're exactly the person who should do that. And then ended up, going for it. And, I've been spending several years since then. I was in 2012, really not only figuring out what works to win campaigns, but what works to build power long-term, because no one campaign will right the wrongs that need righting in our communities. No one campaign builds the democracy we need. And so I experienced what it felt like to win too. And winning feels really, really good.
Well, yes.
Really, really good.
Well, great answer. And I love that story. The marriage amendment, I think it woke a lot of people up, yes. And I think that I love that connection too, to that personal sense of loving or wanting to be loved, and then trying to deny that to another human being. That's ridiculous. So, well, that's a great answer. So, now talking a little bit about yourself, then a little bit more. I was reading a little bit on your bio in the Take Action Minnesota site. You were from Washington, you said, is that correct?
Yeah.
Washington State, or what?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's where you went to school?
Yeah, I grew up in Federal Way, which is just south of Seattle, north of Tacoma. Went to Spokane for college and grad school. I was there this weekend. Oh my God.
I was going to ask, do you get back very, very often?
It's the most wonderful place in the world. I love Minnesota. Minnesota is my adopted home, and you all don't even know what you're missing when it comes to mountains and rivers and the water. Yeah. I'm
a flatlander. I'm going to tell you that I drove through the last time we took a trip. I drove through the mountains, a driving trip, and I had nightmares every night about falling off of hills. And I realized I'm a flatlander. I love the beauty of it, but it scares the crap out of me, I think. Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. And so the other thing you mentioned, and I wanted to kind of touch on this too, that, you've done some work as a person of faith. And that's something, I like to see. I have an affinity to other people of faith. I'm a person of faith myself. And, there's a place for us in this progressive resistance. We belong here. And I don't know how to tell that story. So I don't know if you have a way of talking about that.
Well, there's a lot of different ways. I think there's like the way I was introduced to faith in the movement, and then there's the way I've come to understand it is a little bit different. The faith team at Minnesotans United. So that was there was 8 of us who we were organizing our denomination. So I was the Catholic organizer with another guy who now works for Land Stewardship Project, Jonathan Maurer Jones. We had folks focused on clergy. We had folks who were organizing Lutherans, folks who were organizing in the UCC, folks who were organizing in the United Methodists, Baptists, the Buddhist communities, everything. And at the time, it was in part because, one, we knew we needed to organize a massive, massive base of supporters, and also because it was a necessity strategically that the people for the amendment could not keep the faith ground. One, because it's a lie that, you have to choose between being homophobic or being a person, being, anti-gay or a person of faith, but also because there are so many Minnesotans right in there in the middle who really need to feel, who felt very real conflicts between what their faith had told them and the loyalty they felt to that and the people in their lives or themselves. And we needed to show another path. I think how I understand faith and organizing now is a little bit different in that, you know, we just don't turn off any one piece of ourselves when we show up together. And whatever kind of spirituality grounds us so that we can have courage is essential to movement struggle, because there is none of the wins we need to win are going to be won without us accessing courage and doing some brave and scary things. And whether that's like going to a door knock for the first time, or getting arrested at the Capitol building, or running for office, whatever people need to access, they've got to have a place of courage and a place of really strong values. And for so many people, that's not, an organized religion, but that deep spirituality is like, just something that we need to have and cultivate amongst ourselves. It's part of our connection to each other too,
Well, I think, to me, it's just a moral sense that, the Bible talks about us all having it written on our hearts. Mm-hmm. And I think we carry that together. And so, no, that's great. I'll
tell you another thing. So this is something people can use for their meetings. Unless you've been living under a rock, you've seen the deep spiritual and emotional depletion, especially of sexual assault survivors in the last several weeks and generally. And one tool that some organizers at Take Action use, that Adike Aguilar, our Women of Color organizer, brought to us is a check-in at our meetings called PIES, where you check in on how you're feeling physically, intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually. PIES. Oh, okay. And if folks if they're feeling like I'm at like a 10 intellectually, but I'm low spiritually, we might be in trouble. Like, that's a hard place to organize from. That's a hard place to find, energy from. And so it's also another way for us to kind of check in together.
Cool. I like that. That's great. All right. Well, moving on, I wanted to spend a little time talking about your current job now. You are a training director for Take Action Minnesota. What does that entail? And then we, dovetail a little bit into, what Take Action Minnesota does. And so I'm going to give you a few minutes to go off on that.
Sure. So I'll just tell you quickly who Take Action is. So we're a statewide people's organization. We have members in every county and legislative district of the state. We're 12 years old, and we work for racial, economic, and gender justice. And so we do all around the cycle of politics. We do electoral work, we do community organizing, we do legislative work. And so recently we're part of the coalitions to pass the $15 minimum wage in Minneapolis, working on it in St. Paul, passed Earn Sick and Safe Time in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Duluth, with the coalitions there. And now we're in electoral mode, hard electoral mode. So we do a lot of work. One of the things that I love about Take Action, and I've been a member of Take Action since 2013, I've only been working there since 2015, is that we work to make sure that there is more room in our politics for dreaming and for claiming what we actually need. And so, yeah. Oh, there we are. That's Take Action.
We have technology.
Yeah, you can see some of our issue areas are, on the economic side, criminal justice reform, healthcare, democracy, and voting rights. One of the biggest victories that Take Action has had was in leading the Vote No on voter restriction campaign in 2012.
You want me to click through to is there something here we can look at?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay.
You can explain. Keeping a website like this up to date is always a little challenge, so I don't want to know what you're going to find.
Okay, all right.
All good stuff.
But it's at takeactionminnesota.org, right? That's your website.
Right. Okay. All spelled out. We don't waste any letters. So my role as training director and is to, I think I wrote on my little bio, personal trainer for the movement. So when I first got involved in organizing, some of the most important things I got was training. That is, working to make sure that I was doing effective work, that I was doing brave work. Oh my gosh.
Well, that's a nice picture.
My 1-year-old just walked in. Not playtime, baby.
Well, and I forgot to ask you about your family. So you're married and you have, is it 3 children or 2 children?
I have 2 kids. That's my husband and my little guy, Vinny. Bye bye.
Hi, guys.
Thanks, baby. So training director. So training is an essential part of organizing, because if we don't develop new leaders and build a bigger base, we're not building any power. And if we don't have any power, we can't win things. If we don't have enough power of voters, we can't win things. If we don't have enough power to push elected officials to then enact the things we want, we can't win things. If we can't go after employers and corporations that are exploiting people, we can't win anything, and so training to me is not only a place, there's a lot of different kinds of training, and the kind of training I believe in comes from a lot of different legacies. We Take Action had a long-standing training and organizing director. Her name was Pamela Twist. She's a Minnesotan. She's now with People's Action, but really created a deep tradition at Take Action around agitational training, which is about pushing an individual to look at their values and their vision for themselves and look at their behavior side by side and make calls about, am I living out my values in the most bold way possible? Am I getting closer to the vision I have for myself? And if I'm not, why? We also come do training from a perspective of popular education, which is different from this other kinds of education. Like most of us learn in school that there's knowledge and you learn it. Like it's out there and someone teaches it to you, you read a book and there it is. Yeah. Popular education is a little bit different in that it starts with our own experiences of the world. And then we learn about each other's experiences, and then we find the patterns. What do we see there? What do we observe? And then draw lessons from there. Popular education is a rooted type of learning from especially Latin America. So we bring in that, there's always innovation going on. You would never guess from the way a lot of electoral campaigns or a lot of people do their work that there is any kind of innovation happening. They're like, oh, we do the same thing. We always do the same thing. Yep. And I don't believe in that. And I also don't believe that that if you just learn the skills, that's enough. I see a lot of people. I have trained thousands of people at this point in my career. And if someone knows all the skills to give the perfect door knock, to make the perfect speech, to raise that money, to, recruit that volunteer, but they don't feel the confidence that they can use it, it doesn't matter. Right. And so a lot of what we do is about building confidence, is about building people, supporting people, and building up the vision they have for themselves, because a lot of us have learned that we don't deserve power, we don't deserve access. That's the message we get all the time, and the feelings that we internalize all the time. I also think, our country is so fractured across lines of race, across lines of class, and the times where we've ever, on gender in particular, the times where we've ever won anything is when we find a way to bridge those divides and build relationships, and that's not simple. And so, a lot of what I do is try to learn these things myself, pass them on to other people, support people in figuring it out together. Yeah, it's really fun.
That sounds like it. And you've been doing such good work. I've been paying attention, and I don't know if I've mentioned this earlier, but one of the things I do respect about the work that you've done is you've been passionate about it and you've been doing it consistently for the last couple of years. Well, let's talk a little bit about some current events. We did touch a little bit on the Supreme Court thing. That was I'm asking because I don't you're my first female guest. So what's your, as a woman on the street?
Did you have Tina Smith?
Well, no, since the nomination.
Oh,
Yeah. No, Tina was on, yes. It was like, great. But since the nomination, Kavanaugh, sworn in, was it yesterday right away, and already hired a bunch of clerks. How do you feel about this?
There's nothing about this that is shocking to me. I don't think there's anything about it. I don't think it's shocking to a lot of women. I think it's, what is hard about it is that I and others, we feel the depletion. We feel that at a critical moment in our country where our leadership of women, of survivors is so necessary, we feel attacked. And like, for me, like, I just feel like you feel like, I talked about that spirituality, that energy, that courage, like you just feel it fly away. Feel it just, it's harder to do the hard work. And the work that we do is hard, but and I have coworkers who are much more of the policy and legal wonks than me. And today it's like someone was saying, so I asked someone, like, where are we exactly on the decline of the republic? And it's like, okay, we're having those conversations. I mean, I have friends that are learning how to provide abortions. Like, this is a really serious thing for a lot of people I care about. I think a lot about my sons. I have 2 sons, 4 and 1.5. And I think a lot about the kind of men I want them to grow up to be. I send, I love other people, send a lot of happy vibes to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Thankful for her and her fitness in all ways. It's hard, but it hasn't ever not been hard. And I think for people with multiple marginalized identities, like women of color, queer folks, people with disabilities, nothing about this is new. Nothing about Trump feels new. It just feels louder.
Yeah. Well, I'm a feminist, but obviously not a woman. So I just, this was such a punch in the stomach. All right. Yeah. Well, let's get off of the depressing.
Not good news. If you have good news, you gotta.
Actually, no. I was going to move on to Jason Lewis, and that's even crappier. I just wanted to,
Don, is that the good news?
Well, we're hoping. We're getting close. I mean, we're he's the independent voice. So I wanted to go on record somewhere. I see his TV ads, and I don't want to, give him any more TV airtime than what he's. Independent voice. Come on, man. 97% of the time he was voting with Trump. What? How is that independent?
Well, why do you think he's saying that? What do you think he thinks that means?
Well, that's the part where I get so mad because I feel like he's just standing there bald-faced lying to us about the stuff that he cares about and the things that he's trying to do. And it's like he's got this secret plan that for some reason somebody has told him it's okay to lie to your constituency or did not even answer to them. It's just I'll look forward to replacing him with Angie Craig. I got to tell you that.
Well, I think, I don't think that he is saying he's independent because people believe that he doesn't vote with Republicans. I think he's saying that because it feels like what Donald Trump said about himself. That's all that is. It's him aligning with this, like, it's the same reason people liked Bernie Sanders. They said, like, he says what he thinks. Okay.
But they're not.
He thinks crap. He thinks bad things, and so, and I think honestly, I think it's just right. It sounds exactly the same to me as everything Donald Trump ever said. It sounds like scapegoating. It sounds like dog whistles. It sounds like not sharing Minnesota's values. You know, Minnesotans believe that we look out for each other. We have been a progressive state for years. We are leading the nation in many ways, and we are healing in many beautiful ways that, like, they would rather we not, Trump and Lewis and the like. And so, you know, he's just trying to prove that he's like Trump. Yeah. Maybe a slightly cleaned up version, but even then, no, he's, yeah, I think that's all he means when he says independent. I don't think he's tricking anyone that he's not completely on the right wing.
No, I think you're absolutely right, and I appreciate your opinions on that. All right, so I think we've reached the end of our hour, and I am going to play a little harmonica music, and we're going to call it a day. But thank you for coming on, Sabrina. It's been a real pleasure visiting with you, and I hope maybe we can do this again real soon.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, have a good evening.
You too.